welcome to episode 5 of QueerTrek, a tricorder transmissions LGBTQ plus community podcast. My name is Marty, and I am joined, as always, by my favorite co-host, Heather. Heather, how are you doing today?
I'm taking pictures of your faces. I'm really excited. Thank you, Marty, for coming up with this idea. It's super awesome. And we're really excited because we have not one, not two, but a lot of guests, 6, 7, I don't know.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Yeah. So, a great idea turned into a roundtable because guess what? People love Discovery and they love Stamets and Culber. And so spoilers, that's what we're talking about. But I'll stop talking. Back to you, Marty.
For those who are new to the show, QueerTrek is an LGBTQ community-empowered Star Trek podcast where the topics come from you and your suggestions. Each show, our host will be joined by guests from the LGBTQ plus community who will share their stories while discussing the subjects they choose within the scope of Star Trek's 52-year history. Topics range from personal stories, episode examinations, characters, and themes in Star Trek, all from a queer perspective. If you would like to submit a topic idea, or if you would like to be a guest on QueerTrek, you can reach us by email at queertrek@thetricordertransmissions.com, on Twitter at QueerTrekPod, or you can use the submission form at queertrek.thetricordertransmissions.com. This is your podcast, and we need you to make it happen. We also do have a Patreon. Heather, do you want to tell everyone about our Patreon?
I will. So via Patreon, you can support our show. We don't do any advertising here on the Tricorder Transmissions. We rely on the generosity of our patrons and our Patreon family. So you can support us for as little as $1, and that will give you access to unedited shows, Patreon hangouts, which we do about once a month. You get a cool exclusive pin or button, whatever you want to call it these days. And if you come on our show, I'm going to be better about this, but we have special QueerTrek pins, which are super awesome. And so I will be sure to send those out to our guests and our supporters. But it's patreon.com/thetricordertransmissions. And we're actually in the process of working on some more rewards and tiers and all kinds of fun stuff. We're revamping our Patreon a little bit just to give you a little bit more bang for your support. But yeah, that's where you find us, patreon.com/thetricordertransmissions.
Awesome. Well, today, of course, as Heather mentioned, we are talking about our space booze and why we love them, our Valentine's Day special roundtable episode, and we have so many guests joining us today. So let's just go around the table and introduce ourselves, give a brief history of your Star Trek story, and if you're comfortable, even your queer story. So since he was our first guest to come on board, let's start with Laz.
Hello. Thank you for having all of us aboard.
Thank you for joining us. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to speak the space booze.
And for those who don't know who you are, because you're kind of you've got an artistic presence online.
Yeah. So my name is Laz Marquez, and I'm an artist illustrator. The Trek community probably knows me best for my Star Trek Discovery episode posters that I started for the first season and then continued into the second season. I'm actually in the process of wrapping up the third episode, which I'm super excited about. And my Star Trek story would be I've been a longtime fan since I was around 5 or 6. After watching TNG for the first time and falling in love with that family, and continued to be a huge fan ever since. And because we have a lot of people, I'm trying to go quickly. My queer story is I've been an out and proud gay man since I was 18 when I came out, and I'm just really excited to speak to everybody on the LGBTQ spectrum about QueerTrek.
Awesome. We're so happy to have you here. Let's move on. I'm just going to go in order of boxes here. Krista, let's go to you.
Hi, I'm Krista. Now I don't remember what I was supposed to say. So, sorry, I get really nervous.
That's okay.
I'm a Star Trek fan since I was little. I used to watch with my dad. He would like put me on his lap and we'd watch together. So that was kind of how like I fell in love with it, was my dad introduced me to it. And in the last like couple years, it's kind of become my thing because he's like, oh, I'm too old for that now. But in the last like year, I've actually kind of come out as bisexual. So that's kind of a big thing. Like seeing this relationship in Star Trek has been a huge thing for me. Just kind of seeing like, oh my gosh, it's me. That's kind of helped me like accept who I am.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure we're going to dive into that more a little bit later on. Let's move down to Sabrina. How are you doing, Sabrina?
I turned up my microphone. I don't know if that's better
that's
now.
Way better. Thank you so much.
Okay, cool. I figured out how. Okay, so I'm Sabrina Mittermeier. I'm in Germany, so it's not that early for me, thankfully. I guess my Star Trek story is actually similar to Krista's, because my dad watched Voyager with me when it came out in Germany, and I was like 5 years old. So I've also been a Trekkie all my life, I think. And yeah, so we will talk about that, but having gay people in space or queer people in space in that form is really important. And recently I've also started to engage with Star Trek, mostly because of Discovery academically, because I have a PhD in American cultural history. And I'm editing a whole book on Star Trek Discovery right now. So that's my new Trek story, sort of. And yeah, my queer story is I'm also bisexual. I guess I've always known that I'm bisexual, but I know that in the last year or so, I've also kind of engaged with that a lot more. And that kind of coincided with Discovery. And I think that's not a coincidence. So.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here. So let's move on. Avery.
All right. Well, my Star Trek story is I was a latchkey kid who needed a little bit of guidance, and I found it in Star Trek in middle school. And my queer story is I'm a 34-year-old trans lady, she, her, all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's pretty much me.
And Ned?
Hi, I'm Ned. Watching Voyager with my parents are some of my earliest memories too. We like that was the time I was like allowed to stay up past like 8 p.m. It was a two-parter, and I've always loved it. And as for my queer story, I was like a Catholic child, and so I did the whole like, oh, girls are so pretty, I wish I was gay, to like, oh, girls are really pretty and I'm bisexual too, oh, boys are gross, I'm really gay. That's where I am now,
and I'm very happy about that.
Oh yeah, and we're
a thing.
Yeah.
That's cute. All right, Tyler. How you doing, Tyler?
Hello, everybody. Heather, Marty, distinguished panel, thank you for having me. So, I am, my Star Trek story is I was introduced to Space Seed on Laserdisc about 20 years ago by my father. And the TOS is my crew in my generation. So that's who I've always been. I cosplay as Captain Kirk when I go to conventions. And my gay story is I discovered I was gay when I was about 20 years old. And I'm out to my friends, to my loved ones, to my work, but I am not out to my family, which is a little difficult for me because I'm from the Midwest. I live just outside of Kansas City. I'm from Southwest Missouri. So it's been a difficult journey for me, and there'll be more of that to come, but that's a conversation for another time. But I'm very happy to be here talking about this part of my life. So thank you for having me.
Thanks for joining us. Scott.
Good morning. Excuse me.
How you doing today? Good morning.
Doing well, thanks. Thanks for having me. My Star Trek story started in the original syndication run of TOS, seeing it after school in the afternoons, racing home and making sure I caught every episode. And the fandom just grew from there for me. I loved the original series as a kid. And when the motion picture premiered, I became a sci-fi model builder and collector, because the first words out of my mouth when I saw the refit Enterprise hanging there in space dock were, I want a model of that ship. And probably built it like a dozen times in different forms and techniques and stuff. But I've been a fan of the entire franchise, and it's just a wonderful thing to be part of this community, especially now with social media, because my love of Star Trek was singular in my family. I did not have, my parents weren't into it. My brother wasn't into it. My friends all thought it was the most geekiest thing ever, and nobody got it. So until fan groups started popping up in whatever town I was in, it was a very lonesome fandom for me. But that's all changed now, and I'm really grateful for that. My queer story is I was raised Mormon, and I was very openly gay in my high school, but not at church. And then the two worlds collided. I was excommunicated at 17, and my family is still very devoutly Mormon. But they love me and they accept me. And it's been an interesting journey, and it's still a process for us to find and learn to respect the boundaries both ways. But I'm openly gay, and I have just a lot of respect for people, whatever part of the process they're in as far as coming out. And so sharing this kind of thing is really special for me. So thanks.
Well, we're glad you're here to share your story with us. Thanks so much. And then last but certainly not least, we have Ryan. Ryan, how are you doing today?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Marty and Heather. And it's great to see everyone on the panel that I've interacted with in various social media forums over the years. In terms of my Star Trek story, according to my mom, I started watching the original series when I was 2. And that when the first chords of the theme song would play, I'd run into the living room and demand that they not change the channel. And then I would sit there transfixed watching those shows. And then my father, who was in the Navy, whenever he'd come home from deployment, he'd always take me to a Star Trek convention. And that was sort of how I bonded with my father as a child, especially since he was away for most of it. And I'm also a uniform junkie, so I have, like, I think almost every variation of Captain Kirk's uniform. So that's my Star Trek thing. In terms of my queer story, it's been a 20-year coming out process, I think. I first discovered that, I had an attraction to both men and women and everything in between in my 20s. And at the time, 20 years ago, it's kind of wasn't as widely open as it is now. And so I'd come out to like a select few friends, and then slowly but surely I would come out to coworkers. And then, just within the last year, I finally came out to my parents, and I'm 42. So it's been a process. And I think now I'm at a stage in my life where I fully embrace my sexuality. And I try to eschew the labels that can sometimes be placed on the queer community, especially gay men, right? Fitting into certain molds. And I don't want to do that anymore in my life.
We're so glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us. All right, so Heather, I think we can just go ahead and dive right in, unless you have anything you'd like to say first.
My heart is like just lots of hearts, and like I'm that emoji with the little hearts around the head right now. Because even with little brief, mini me stories, I'm touched by all of you. So thank you guys for all being here. And I'm going to shut up or I'm going to cry. So go to the questions, Marty.
All right, so let's start off by discussing the characters of Stamets and Culber and what their relationship means to us. Let's just go in the same order, and then we'll finish up with Heather and myself last. So Laz.
Yeah.
Lead the way.
Okay, let's do this. Yeah, I think for so many years, and I'll just kind of go from like the cultural angle, since a lot of us touched upon that in different ways. But I remember growing up watching, Trek or pretty much any sort of, science fiction or genre, serialized stories, and never really seeing myself on the screen. I grew up primarily digesting media when I was in, the 1980s and 90s. So it hadn't really gotten to that point. And I think now we're starting to see that grow so much more. And we're starting to see more representation happen, sometimes perhaps not quick enough. But I remember just crying when I heard that we would finally get a true gay couple on television. We had seen sparks of that, I think, throughout the years, but because it was Trek and because I have such a close tie to those moral tales and the philosophies, it was just amazing to know that we would get that. I think touching upon something Ryan just said as well, is that in previous times, at least from a male gay couple standpoint, it was often pretty cartoony when we would see it represented. It would be a little bit more of a stereotype. So I think what's beautiful about seeing Culber and Stamets is that it wasn't the core of who they were. It was, they were these individuals who loved each other, but it wasn't what defined them fully. It was, just these two people that had a very sincere relationship and, with some complexities along the way. So I'm just grateful that we got there.
Queer people brush their teeth too, y'all.
Right?
That's funny.
All right, Krista.
I think just seeing that like relationship between the two of them, just having it in Star Trek was, of course, something they never had before. And it was something that we really needed, but it's not like we were coming forward and be like, oh, we're demanding it. It was just like realizing that, oh, it's there. And they didn't do it in a way that was like kinky, in a way of like, oh, look, here's two guys that are in a relationship. It was very the way they introduced the characters, like Laz had said, and just made them into this relationship, and they're just showing you that they're just normal people and that this exists outside of just like what's happening now. There's a lot of people like, oh yeah, that's a fad, like queer people, that'll all go away. But it's not, it's lifestyle. This is the way that we are. And it's just so amazing to see that and see like, oh, it's represented in a way that like respectful to us, and it shows our lives and it's not insulting in any way. It's very like, oh, makes us feel really good.
I totally agree. Sabrina?
Yes, I need to get a hello to Jason Isaacs out of my system because we're on a podcast. I mean, I feel like Laz and Krista have already covered all of this beautifully, but also to add the academic perspective, because I've taught a seminar on LGBT representation on US television, and just looking at that, like it started in the 70s and, it's abysmal, and you have like a few cliche characters, and then obviously people keep dying, or they're murderers or horrible, horrible people, whether that's gay men or lesbian women or bisexual people or transgender people. They're either victims or horrible psychopaths in many cases, and then it gets more diverse. But I think having the two of them, and especially not just the gay characters on the show, but also by who they're portrayed by. Like you have Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp doing this, and when I found out that they were being cast for this show, I knew it was going to be good, and it was going to be good representation. And that's what we got. I mean, we still have so far to go with them too, but I feel like they already started it out so well.
Absolutely. Avery, what are your thoughts?
I am very happy that they have a couple finally on Star Trek where the idea that they're a couple is not society ending as far as LGBT couples. Where in the past you've had like Riker with the agendered race and Dax with her ex-wife, and every time there was a relationship in Star Trek, it was always, oh, well, if they're together, not because they're gay, but if they're together, it will completely destroy our society. And for me, it's important to finally have some representation on TV where it's normal. It's not world ending no matter what. And that, you barely get that on regular TV. And it's like something that I feel Star Trek should have been doing 25 years ago. So to me, it's nice and kind of caught up. So yeah, that's my feeling on it.
I forgot to unmute. Let's move on to Ned.
Gays in space. Gays in space. Okay, they make me really happy just because it's not a coming out story, and it's not a huge angsty what do I do? Like, do I stay with my partner or do I go with my family? It's just like it's a part of their lives. I like that they have a strong foundation, and it's not a narrative of like, oh, like we're together, but like what if they post us to different ships or whatever, which is something that Star Trek does kind of a lot in romances. So I really like that. Like it's like a foundation for them. It's something that they can lean on, but it's not something they have to fight.
And Tyler?
Well, yeah, a lot of it's been said, but I appreciate, I definitely appreciate both the characters very much. I appreciate them for different reasons. Stamets being the brilliant scientist, engineer that he is, and one of the lines that really meant a lot to me, and one of the things that I think we'll explore more as the series goes on, is that a lot of times that the discoveries will excite him more than the reality of the situation, like the possibility of more discoveries and science and so forth. And then Culber, I think, definitely respecting a lot of the history that's come before him with the medical professionals on the starships, because you see a little bit of a crabby doctor in Dr. McCoy, and also a lot of empathy from Dr. Crusher. So there's definitely a lot of respect for what has come before. So which I very much appreciate from the both of them as actors and from the writers. And the writers have done a brilliant job of making them just another part of the ship. It doesn't define them, like it's already been said. Like you see shows today like 90210, Shameless, Andy Mack, Dallas from the 80s that have sort of had characters do 180s when it comes to realizing that some of their friends are gay. And what I appreciate about these writers is that they've just made it normal. They've just made it another part of the ship, which I appreciate very much.
Scott?
Yeah, I excuse me. I echo what everybody else has said. The one thing that was so exciting was to have them on the show. That the past had given us so many teases in the franchise towards representation and learning the backstory about like the episode with Riker and the agender race, how they wanted to bring our stories as LGBTQ people into Trek, but the powers that be wouldn't let them. We had our allies then, but society in whatever way was standing in the way. Now with Discovery being on streaming service that you're paying for and not broadcast TV, the excitement for opening up all the different methods of storytelling, the visuals, but the heart of the story, telling our stories in such a frank manner, was what really got me interested in the show. And then of course, like had been mentioned before, learning that it was Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz, I just said, I'm sold. Get this show on the air right now. It was fabulous. Yeah.
And Ryan?
Yeah, I love what everyone has had to say thus far, and I totally agree with all the comments. I think they're spot on. For myself, I think it means for the first time in the history of the show I love most, I can see myself wholly, totally without having to imagine myself inserted into that world. There I am for all to see. It's simply there There's no lantern hung over it. Stamets and Culber exist as any other couple, gay, straight, or otherwise. And, honestly, after some 50 years, it's about time. It's just about time.
Hear, hear. Heather.
I'm so nervous. I don't know why. I think I am unexpectedly very emotional. And when that happens, I don't speak eloquently and it makes me nervous. Yeah, so in Star Trek Beyond, we had a very subtle nod to a gay Sulu. And for me, like, I did not expect that moment to make me cry in the theater. And unfortunately, like, I knew it was coming. I don't know if that got spoiled before the movie or what, but for a lot of people in our community, even though that was appreciated, that still wasn't enough, because as we've said, Star Trek has this history of trying to showcase the LGBTQ community and then explaining it away by heteronormativity. It's always, no, they were straight in some way. And so Sulu with his husband and daughter was kind of the first time that we really got a glimpse of that, but there was no discussion beyond a scene or that just being present in the film. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that Discovery's doing that keep me saying it's about time. And while I didn't see them on the screen and have this giant emotional reaction, like, oh my God, I really needed this, because I sort of got that with Beyond. This is so much more, because it's there for all of us. And when we got the first kiss, because I don't know, I was sitting there the whole time like, I gotta have the kiss, like, I just need it. Like, they're such a beautiful couple, and I think that seeing that for me was just, I was so elated. And I tweeted something about it that night, and that tweet got retweeted like 1,000 times or something, or got 1,000 to me, it was validation and saying that whether it was queer people liking it or allies, like, they are welcome. They're welcome here. I think it's really important that despite what's happened with Culber's character, he's also, he's not just our first gay character, he's a gay man of color. And we may discuss that a little bit more with some of the questions that we've posed. But that in itself alone is also just such a big step for representation. I had a lot more thoughts about it. But again, for some reason, I'm just I'm emotional. That's all that it is, because knowing myself how important it is to see Stamets and Culber, and to see their love continue, and then hearing it from all of you just makes me super happy. It's important. And I think that this discussion is just going to continue to prove how important it is. And that's part of why we're doing it. Marty, you talk now, so I don't have to.
Well, I agree, of course, with everything that you guys have said. And I've noticed a theme that we haven't seen ourselves represented in Star Trek before. But I found it hard not only to see myself represented in Star Trek, but in science fiction in general, which is, a genre that I'm really into. So to hear that there were going to be this gay couple on, my favorite science fiction show was incredible. And to echo what everyone else said, Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz, I've known them since like the Rent days, so I knew that they were going to bring this wonderful chemistry together on screen, which they did. And I love that they were treated just as normal people and they were accepted for who they were. It just was, they were as normal a couple as any other couple on the ship. I was trying to give an example, but I couldn't think of one.
I don't know why people think that the queer community, like, we're just, what do we do? Sit around in rainbow clothes all day and
yeah.
And I think
Um,
part of that,
As most of us are wearing rainbow-esque.
well, I think part of it may be this history of having stereotypical characters. And I mean, yes, some of us are really out there, and like, I really love rainbows. I broke my own rule. I broke my own rule. Sorry. I'm terrible, y'all. I'm terrible. Okay, look, fine. I really, it's, yes, there, and part of this, and this is going to go off topic, and I'm sorry. There was an episode of Queer Eye of this new season on Netflix where the guys went in, and I think it was a trans man. I think his name was Sky.
Yep.
And he was just transitioning, like he had just had his surgery, and he was really embracing who he was. And so he had rainbows everywhere. And they criticized him for it. And like, I'm sorry, I love the Fab Five, but look, like, it's totally okay to love rainbows and be proud of yourself and be proud of being a part of the queer community. And if that's how you choose to express it, go for it. So like, yes, a lot of us love rainbows, okay? But that's, we're not a stereotype, and that's one of the main reasons that we're doing QueerTrek, is to show the community that we are, like I think I said previously, a kaleidoscope. Like, there's all kinds of LGBTQ people out there, and we're not all the same. We're normal people. We live normal lives. We brush our teeth. We squabble. I wanted to point out something that I think is super important, because Marty mentioned chemistry. And, I think we can all agree that, like, Culber and Stamets, they're a unique couple. Like, they tease each other, they flirt, it's adorable. But what makes it so powerful is the chemistry that Anthony and Wilson have. Because, like, watching them on After Trek together, especially Wilson, like, oh, I love that man. Like, he's just so sweet and adorable and loving and tender. And Anthony, I won't go off on a thing about Anthony, because we all know how much I love Anthony, but they're amazing people. They're amazing people. They're amazing LGBTQ activists. They're an amazing couple on screen. And okay, back to the discussion.
Yeah. They are both amazing. They've been friends long before they started work on Star Trek Discovery, so they already had a great relationship going into it. Honestly, I'm a little envious of their relationship, not only the characters but the actors as well. I mean, they just have such like a strong emotional connection to each other, the characters and the actors, and it's always something I look for in other people. And a lot of times, especially within this community, it comes up short because everybody's just looking for other things, But moving on to the next thing, obviously their visibility in Star Trek has affected this community in
that's a really
profound
great
ways.
question.
But
I think,
how has it affected you personally?
I think more so than the representations of the characters on screen, I think what it made me realize through seeing and interacting with the fan base and the community on things like social media was being able to see people like Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp being such advocates and such beautifully spoken warriors for so many LGBTQ causes, and realizing, because from my perspective, I primarily always really used social media as an artist as like more of a business thing. I don't post a lot of things that are super personal, so I kind of used it in those means for quite some time. But seeing again Wilson and Anthony stepping it up and speaking their truths and standing up for other people, I think that's what really affected me the most and inspired me to be more vocal within the community and less kind of oddly private about it, and really make sure that if I can, I would like to elevate the voices of others versus my own. And I think that that's really what those two individuals taught me and inspired me since they've been in the public eye for Discovery.
Personally, just seeing their relationship, the two of them, it was something, because
Krista?
I've never really like identified as anything. I never wanted to, like, growing up, because I grew up in the Midwest and a very strict religious family. So like any kind of mention, that kind of stuff was not allowed. So the fact that I was attracted to women growing up was always like, oh no, I think they're pretty. I'm not allowed to like have any thoughts of any kind because I have to be the way that my parents say that I am. So just kind of seeing them was just kind of that realization of like, this is a show that I've loved for so long, and it's kind of like I was raised on it, and suddenly seeing it is like, this is an acceptable thing and it's okay. And like I like who I am, and I like that I love whoever I love, and I love for the sake of love. And just getting to see that was just such a great thing that like, like I've never, like my family does not know, not out to my family, really only to like my friends and stuff. But it's just very personally, like, this is seeing this relationship is like, oh my gosh, it's okay. And then just getting to interact with like Anthony and Wilson online, because they're just so wonderful. You say something, they'll respond back to you because they want to have a conversation with you. And it's just great. It's like beginning to enter the community and feeling so welcome and so comfortable in ways that I've never felt before has really helped me just like be me and accept myself as me.
Yeah, it definitely had a huge impact, and it took
That's
me a while to
wonderful.
realize how much that
Sabrina.
mattered. And because I mean, I grew up with Star Trek, as I said, I was a little kid, but then for a while I kind of lost track of the franchise because there wasn't any new shows for such a long time. Then the Kelvin timeline movies, I watched them, but wasn't very passionate about them. So up until Discovery came out, I wasn't really in the fandom for a long time. And then, but I remember like end of 2017, I think, after the toothbrushing scene had happened and all of that, and I think I was a little drunk. I was walking home and I was texting my friend Mareike, who's also the person who was editing that book with me, and I just went, there's queer people in Star Trek. And for some reason, I had that moment of noticing how much that mattered, because it was something I always grew up with, and I never really reflected that they were not there before until they were. And then I realized it was so, so important. And then not that much later, last year in February, I got that Delta Shield rainbow tattoo that's on my arm now. And I mean, that I put that there because of so many reasons, but mostly for Wilson and Anthony and their representation and the whole show that has started to matter so much to me. And because other people said Wilson and Anthony are so open on social media and they interact with you. And then I was lucky enough to see them in Birmingham at Destination Star Trek in October. And I got up and asked a question at the panel, and I just cried at everybody there. And then I went back to get autographs later, and I cried some more and talked to them about stuff, and they were so nice and so welcoming. And I mean, they probably get queer people crying at them all the time, but it still mattered a lot, and I still know that it matters to them too. So.
I've got to just second what everyone has said. For me,
it matters to a lot of people. So you're
great
right
to have.
Avery.
I mean, we live in Louisiana, so there's not a huge queer community, and when my entire life, there's not been a big Star Trek fan base that I could be part of. And to have those two things kind of come together, and like I'm very active on Twitter, and for those communities to kind of get together and have a place to go, it's really nice to be able to make, jokes about Star Trek and being gay and everything just coming together. So it means my, separate families can be one super family that will take over the galaxy with.
It was a huge relief that they cast gay actors to be gay for me, because
Ned.
usually you get like, or often people will be so quick to like defend their heterosexuality or whatever if they're in gay roles and distance themselves from whatever it is that they're doing, just so like nobody thinks anything bad about them. And so to see these gay actors, a gay actor of color, be able to like express that part of themselves on screen and kind of do it for all of us and do it in a show that means so much to so many of us was just really great. I think I cried at the toothbrushing scene. I might have, like,
I think we both did.
Yeah, we probably cried.
I have to just pop in really quick and say that Avery and Ned are super adorable.
Thank you. We try. It's an act
Okay,
for practicing.
Back to you, Marty.
I know not everyone can
They
see
keep
the
looking
video,
at each other so
especially if you're
lovingly,
listening to
and
this,
it's
but
just
they're sitting close together.
I am emotionally compromised in this
it's great.
episode. I give up. All right, I'm muting myself. Bye.
Yeah.
Well, I think I might be in the minority here because it's only recently that I've actually felt
Tyler, let's move on
unconditional
to
love
you.
in my life about being gay. So it's different for me. So I'm emotional myself. The visibility certainly has affected me in different ways, but also because Star Trek has played a great deal of influence in my life, because I teach classes here in Kansas. I teach classes with the Osher Institute, and I teach a class on Star Trek. And on a certain level, yes, it does affect me, because if you look at our history, something that I was doing research about what to say, and there was a quote from Pocketbooks back in 1992 that really stuck with me. It was a quote on their submissions. And the quote was, "They are not interested in books or submissions that suggest anything other than friendship between the crew members of the USS Enterprise." So that definitely stuck with me. And it also stuck with me when I was reading my books on Trek, that Roddenberry himself was homophobic. And later in his life, he admitted that he was wrong about it. And he wanted to see gay characters on Star Trek. But unfortunately, he passed away before that could happen on TNG. And the writers have gone on record saying it was never a priority for them. We had First Contact. We thought Lieutenant Hawk was going to be a gay character. And then that was quelched pretty quickly. So it definitely, in the novels, yes. So I appreciate that from a historical
They did make him a gay
standpoint, because
character in the novels.
I'm a historian
though, in the
by
Titan
trade,
novels.
and
Yeah.
it's meant a lot to me personally, because I'm not sure I think I know what unconditional love feels like. So this is a new feeling for me. So I'm grateful.
I love you.
Thank God somebody will.
I think I speak for everyone when we say we love you, and we will accept you
When I
unconditionally.
first thought about the question, I was hesitant to say anything,
Scott, how
because
about
I
you?
feel at 51 years old and being comfortable in my skin as an out LGBTQ person, I didn't think that the show's representation would impact me very much. But in the last 24 hours, I've been kind of revisiting that stance a little bit. And it's made me realize that I've been on social media in the periphery in the Trek fandom for a long time, and just now starting to get into conversations with people and get to know them, get to know their joys, their struggles. And I realized that at my age, even though I live in a community that's rather conservative, slow as far as social justice goes, I still have a responsibility to help those that come after me, whether it's just a friendly helping or this person needs intervention, they need emergency assistance. I've got to put myself out there more to lift somebody up, because I've had that happen for me. And this Star Trek community is so vast and so caring, especially the LGBTQ part of it. We are a tight-knit family, even though we're practically strangers, but we've got to care for each other. And so that was a really powerful thing for me to realize. And I just hope I can live up to that.
I'm really glad I didn't wear mascara.
Oh, I'm sorry, Heather.
No, it's
that was beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
No, thank you. Thank you. That was really beautifully said. And
oh, Heather.
I mean, that's why we're here, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, it's great to hear how important this is with everyone.
We're here to lift each
like
other
I
up,
said
so.
earlier, this
Ryan.
past few years has been sort of this process to embrace who I am more fully. And I think in the times that we live in, as difficult as they have become in the last few years for LGBTQ folks, I felt it was very important to become more visible in my sexuality, and started posting it more on social media and all that. And so seeing Paul and Hugh as this loving couple gives me hope that it'll be okay. That I can be that one day, and that people like us will make it to tomorrow, that we will continue on beyond the strife that we have gone through for many, many decades, especially in this country. And so I think just having that relationship is puts in young queer people's minds that we will be in the future. We will not just be, it's almost like Nichelle Nichols in the original Star Trek, right? Where, a young Black a kid could see that and say, oh, I'm going to be in the future, and I think it's that for Stamets and Culber.
Oh. No, yes. I'm just trying to figure out where to start.
That's awesome.
I said somewhere, I don't know where, if it was
Heather,
a conversation or a tweet or a podcast, that the future is very colorful and very queer. And I think that representation is powerful and representation is empowering. And what I'm taking from this discussion, we have a variety of people here. We have a variety of ethnicities. We have a variety of sexual orientations. We all feel empowered by seeing Stamets and Culber on screen. And I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who are happy just to have them there. But what I've seen personally, and I couldn't prove whether it was an effect, whether it was a Culmets effect or not, but I've been going to the Las Vegas Star Trek convention now for 10 years. And over those 10 years, my own identity has changed. So, maybe 10 years ago, I didn't look for other queer people. I have seen more and more of us start coming, and not just showing up, but getting together in groups, socializing that way. But then, wearing our little pins, or just finding ways to say, like, we're queer and we're here, basically. And this past year at STLV, there were more gay couples than I have ever seen. And I had to stop and think, like, is this an effect of, society, and the fact that, our community is, I think, this is a tough thing to say because it really doesn't feel like it right now with our political situation in the United States
Yes.
and across the world. But I think that there are more people coming out and feeling confident in doing so than ever before. Having said that, it's also a really difficult time to be an LGBTQ person, especially the T in LGBTQ.
Fries spread like yawns, right?
But seeing this presence, seeing more people attending, more people coming out, more people wanting to socialize, more events happening. We had our Night of Diversity party this past STLV, which our network sponsored. We have Gays in Space, which is having events. I've been trying to do LGBTQ like group family photos and little like hallway get-togethers and stuff throughout the past few years. But all of that led me to, we need a podcast. We need to find a way to empower people and to let them speak and tell their stories. And I think that having Stamets and Culber on screen has empowered everybody to do that. It empowered me to start a podcast. I was so fortunate to have Marty in my life, to be able to have Marty be my co-host.
Oh, that's awesome.
But representation isn't just important. Representation is power. And it's affected me by changing my life and encouraging me to start this podcast, which is not for me and it's not for Marty, it's for all of you. And so I really appreciate all the wonderful, beautiful things that you've said because it means a lot to me. And I'm going to be quiet now. Back on mute. Bye.
I agree with everything that Heather said. I mean, their relationship has, given me hope that, there's still gay couples in the Star Trek universe. So there's still, obviously we're here, we're queer, we're here to stay. And I don't know if I have anything to add that y'all haven't said already. So
there's I wanted to point out that there, in Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, there's also either a lesbian or a bisexual couple, some kind of queer, as I like to say, because we're so diverse, in the background dancing. So it's nice to see not just, one gay couple, but at least one other gay couple. And I think, I don't think we're going to see it in Discovery. I would be shocked if we did. And I think part of it is because Discovery is so serialized. And despite these first 3 episodes being a little bit more contained and having an episodic element, we don't quite get the character deep dives, and we don't have a trans character yet. But please, Star Trek, the future is inclusive and includes everyone. And so I would really like to see a trans person in Star Trek eventually.
Well, we got 5 more shows on the way, so
we do, and
chances are good.
Maybe somewhere in there we will get that. And so I'm really excited. I don't know if George. I always mess up his last name. Alivios. I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. He is the actor that's in the chair. We saw him also in Magic to Make the Sanest Man Go Mad, and he's been wheeling around in some of the other episodes. I follow him on Twitter, and I had no idea he's family. So yay!
Yay.
It would be great if his character is also gay. But I was just like, yeah, he wanted a gay bachelor show, and I was like, yes. I don't watch it. I want more gay shows, so yes. But it's, it was a great point that Ned made earlier that, not only, do we have queer people, they are queer actors playing those roles. And that is something that you don't see happen a lot, even though the characters may be there, the actors aren't, and then there's a whole ordeal behind the scenes. So anyway, yeah, that's my thing. I think we have already answered, is their relationship important?
I was just going to say that. The next question is their relationship important? But I think judging by the conversations we've already had, it's a unanimous yes. But is there anything else that you guys would like to add about the importance of their relationships?
I would.
Go ahead, go for it.
I think yes, it is important because Trek has pretty much come full circle with Roddenberry's original vision, which is a little more complicated to me now, learning about Roddenberry's preferences over the course of his life. But also, I wonder and I question the Discovery writers are brilliant. Do not get me wrong. I love what they're doing. They're doing a wonderful job. But I question the path of Culber, because he is introduced to us in the 4th episode. He is transformed in the 10th episode. And to put them already in a relationship was an interesting choice, because we've had a lot of courtship over the course of 50 years of Star Trek with Riker and Troy and Miles and Keiko and Kira and Odo, and with only 13 to 14 episodes a season, I wonder if we're going to get our fill of Culber and Stamets moments, and like where do we go? Because again, this is a part of our generation of the now generation. We want things now. We have to be patient. But I wonder, like Jonathan Frakes described it, every episode is like a movie, and they have to move so quickly with so many characters. You have to get through so much in one episode. So I wonder, I'm curious what's going to come next. I question what's going to happen, but I'm very hopeful and very optimistic. So so that's what I had to say about that.
I think that is actually a really good segue. Marty, if you're okay, I think we should save this, favorite scene or quotes, maybe for towards the end.
Get out of my brain.
Yeah, because this, so far, like I've cried 5 times, and this has been full of love and positivity and great stuff. But I think it would be unfair. Culber. Spoilers. Like, I think everyone knows at this point that Tyler murdered.
If anyone's listening to this podcast and they haven't seen Discovery season 1, like, what are you even doing here right now? Because
pause, go watch the whole season, catch up. But Culber was murdered, and that really sucked. That was unexpected, and he was murdered in an awful way that we were then forced to watch over and over and over again.
And we're still watching it in season 2.
Yes, even in season 2, like the 2 worst things for me to see as a queer sexual abuse survivor, like I still get to see. Okay, anyway. So there was a giant discussion about this because many people in our family in the LGBTQ community felt that Culber's death fell into a very common trope, which is the kill your gays trope, which is basically that in television and media for the last forever, gay characters, which are also token characters many times, can either live a very sad, unfortunate, depressing life, or they can be killed off. We have been told by Cruz, by Anthony Rapp, by the writers, by everyone, this is not the end of Culber. So we even saw Culber in the Mycelial Network. We still don't quite know what he is in the network. We don't know how he's coming back, despite being promised over and over again he's coming back. We don't know, is he going to be back as a human and they get to live happily ever after? What's the deal? So
his name is in the opening credits now. So
I know, which props.
He obviously got promoted, but
like there's an awesome there's a positive. But because we have such a large group of unique opinions, perspectives, I wanted to go around and basically pose the question of, how did Culber's death affect you? Do you felt it fell into the trope? And I guess what I'm just going to kind of combine, like what do you want to see with Culber and Stamets moving forward? Like, do you have expectations or wishes of how you want this to be resolved? So Marty, you can still go around the table, but I will at least start with Laz.
Man, this is a loaded question. Okay, well, I guess starting with how I was impacted seeing Culber's death happen, I think a lot of us probably audibly gasped. It wasn't something I was expecting, especially given the promise of seeing our first Trek, gay relationship. It just felt like it came out of nowhere, and it felt very much built around shock value. The kind of Game of Thronesification of serialized TV. It also, on a more personal note, around that time, I was going through a lot of personal issues. My mother was uh, uh, on the tail end of passing away from breast cancer. The relationship that I was in, which was abusive, was falling apart. So I think at that time I was so fragile and so afraid of loss in general that seeing something that I had such hope for, it kind of shattered me a little bit. And then, of course, afterwards, very quickly, we were given promises that we'd see that story evolve. But I think it was just really tough. I'm a Cuban American, and also seeing a Latino for the first time, who again I could identify so closely with, get murdered. It was like it felt like they were just kind of ripping my heart out on many levels. So it was tough. I think in regards to what I hope we'll see from that relationship, I think obviously them reconnecting, but I'm also really intrigued by their differences as characters, because I think time and time again the writers have made very clear that Stamets and Culber are two different kinds of people with two different kinds of personalities. And I'm really intrigued by that notion of exploring a relationship of, one person who acts and communicates a certain way and another person who does, something that kind of love language is different. So I feel like that's something really rich that I would love to see them explore. And it seems to be hinted at, I think, in the first episode of season 2, even seeing that video transmission of him saying, I, along the lines of, I love when you only do things for me, and kind of showing that he understands Stamets' love language. I thought that was really beautiful. So I hope we get more of that.
I'm making hard eyes over here. That was really great. Thank you.
That was really great. Krista.
I could not watch that. Honestly, I had a friend who had told me that was coming, and I was like, oh, what? So the first time I saw that episode, I stopped from there. I did not watch any more of the first season of Discovery until about 3 months after it finished airing all of the episodes. Because I had heard then the promises that there was going to be like, oh, it's not the end for that character, for that relationship. It was very like, oh, okay. So it did kind of feel like a trope to me that we were promised this, and then they killed him off, and it just felt like, why? Like, it didn't feel necessary in a way, though it does, like, in a way with the storyline. And Wilson always likes to say how their gay love saved the universe. That's his big thing. Something I'd like to see for like the characters and the relationship going forward is I would really like them to actually deal with what happened. I think sometimes you see in shows and relationships, they'll gloss over that of like, oh, some traumatic happened, but we're back together, but then it's fine. But I really want to see like Stamets' character going through the emotions of it, because we don't get to see any of that because they're dealing with coming back from the mirror universe and then finishing like the Klingon War. So you don't get to see how he's dealing with that, because you see nothing. You don't think he's dealing with it. But even just in episode 1, we got to see a little bit of his emotion behind the fact that he can't stay because he feels so connected and he's being haunted by like Culber's presence on the ship. So I really think I'd like to see them build on that and not just give us he's back, it's all good. But they really need to like continue and show us how that relationship will grow and change.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, yeah, you made some good points. I had a thought in my head and then it vanished. So sorry. Sabrina.
Yeah, I was definitely gutted watching the scene, but I also know that episode 10 for me was such an emotional roller coaster overall because so much is happening in that episode. And I mean, seeing him die that way, for some reason, when it happened, I gasped, but I also knew that this couldn't be the end of it. Like, I just know, oh, it's Star Trek, it's science fiction. Nobody really ever dies. We've seen so many people come back. But what also really helped was, I think, being so immersed in the fandom already at this point that I was watching After Trek and see Wilson be on After Trek and immediately coming out and reassuring us that he was going to be back and this is not the end. And then he did the same thing on Twitter for weeks, and they had like interviews with him on diverse media outlets, and he put it out there on Twitter, and he engaged with a ton of people that were angry about this, and so did Anti-Rap. So I feel like the trust I had in them from the beginning also helped me kind of be okay with this. I mean, I was still sitting there like, okay, what are they going to do? And I really hope they're not going to do like, oh, the ghost thing or whatever. But since they also reassured us that that was not going to happen, I feel like I could cope with it better. And in terms of what I want to see, I'm with Krista on the fact that I want to see them at screen, although I feel like they're already going there. And like in the future, assuming that Culber is going to be back like as a full human and they can have a relationship together as we were promised, I just want to see more variety of their relationship. I think so far they've been fairly domestic in many ways, and that's that normalization process that we want, but at the same time they could be more fleshed out in terms of what they like to do. I mean, we got the opera thing and all of that, but I'd like to see more about what they do with their lives that may even be specifically queer, you know? And the same goes for Wilson Cruz's Latino identity to be more on the forefront, maybe have him speak Spanish, stuff like that, just to have them more fleshed out.
I see Laz cheering over there.
I am. I like that.
Avery?
Well, I'm going to come at it from, first of all, I kind of did, when it happened, feel like it was, okay, well, they had to kill off the gay character again, whoop-de-doo. But I kind of, from a trans person perspective and a sci-fi fan perspective, I am very interested in how, because it seems with, oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the girl that Tilly sees.
May.
Huh?
May Ahern.
Yeah, when we find out that she's like part of the spore, it's foreshadowing that's how Culber is going to come back, as he's going to be part of the mycelial network. And as a trans person, I kind of find it interesting that it opens up the opportunity to have, it's not a gender transition or anything like that, but a sort of transition inserted in their relationship. So you could explore a lot of the things that, say, a trans person and a cis person in a relationship can experience when one of them transitions, and like the falling in love all over again, learning new things, like when Culber learns, about how to become human again while having, being somewhat spory. I don't know how to put that, but I think that it opens up a lot of interesting storylines that Star Trek, or really no TV show outside of one episode of Doctor Who, when the 12th Doctor regenerates, has ever really successfully tackled. And I hope that's how they go. I don't know if they will, but I feel like it would be very interesting if they did. So,
Ned?
I trust the actors. I don't trust the showrunners. Like, I trust that the actors are doing everything that they can, and I do really appreciate their advocacy and their like kind of keeping the fact that Culber is going to come back sort of in the public eye. I have no faith in showrunners anymore, just because so many times, like, you cannot be happy and gay. You cannot be happy and like good and gay. You can be a happy, good, be a happy, evil gay, but you can't be a happy, good gay. You can only be a villain if you're going to live. And so it would be nice if like they did something and like Culber was magically back and perfectly human and everything. But especially since the May thing, I do think it's going to be like, oh, I'm just going to happily infect myself with a fungus so that I can be with the man I love again, and that feels like such cheating. That feels like cheating to me, and since they've introduced it, I can't really see it going any other way. And I'm nervous that they're just gonna like hand wave it, like, look, he's back, it's fine. Like he's a walking mushroom, it's fine.
On the showrunner point, I'm just glad we don't have to fight against Rick Berman, because he would make sure that that's how it
went. Tyler.
Well, I've been advised by a few friends to just speak my mind, even though it may not be the popular opinion. So it definitely did not feel like a Trek move. That's for sure for me. I from what I understand about, Star Trek writers' rooms are very messy. Like, a lot of our favorite shows from the classic Trek didn't get good until the third or fourth season. So we have to remain patient with them because we have to have faith in them. My beef with it is that I didn't get to know him, because like I said before, he was introduced in episode 4, and then all this went down in episode 10. And I understand that the writers spoke with professionals. They spoke with GLAAD about it to get their opinion on it and how it was handled. I think perhaps it was done. I think perhaps it was also done to test the audience and to test their reaction to these characters, because it did generate a lot of buzz when it was first announced. But you never really know when you're writing a show weeks or months before it's seen by the general public that you don't know if these characters are going to resonate. So I think it was sort of testing the waters for the showrunners, and because CBS tracks all these Twitter mentions, they watch what we tweet and what we Instagram. So it's like Star Trek is a business like any other, and I fundraise for higher education is my job. And as much as I would love to be artistic in what I do, I also have to remember that I have a bottom line to meet. And so there's definitely that business aspect to it as well. And I think perhaps it was done for those reasons, to test the waters of the fans. And so I have to remain patient and remain hopeful. So I know that they know what they're doing and they have a plan. So it's just we have to remain patient as Twitterers in chief here.
You bring up a really interesting point, because I do think they are listening to us. The fact that they were so quick to mention, like, don't worry, it's not over, like almost immediately after the show aired, I think proves that they are watching what we are tweeting and putting out there online. So, and even some of the changes they made in season 2 have shown that they're listening to us, listening to our feedback. So it's a really good point, Tyler. Scott.
When the big scene happened, considering we were so new into getting to know Culber, the initial reaction to his death was being absolutely gutted, which was surprising because we had such a short period of time. But I think with the expectations heaped on his shoulders, or his character's shoulders, to have that yanked out from under us was shocking, not just visually and emotionally, but it was jarring because the flow got interrupted so immediately in the storytelling. It was like, okay, now where are they going to go? This isn't even the end of the first season. What's going to happen? And I don't like getting the flow interrupted so much that you start doubting or questioning the positivity going forward. Like, was it a trope for me? I don't think so, because knowing the writers, they do everything for a purpose. And I think in this day and age, for them to fall into trope land would have been a really huge mistake. And so I think they were educated enough to at least tread carefully with it, that it had a purpose. And with everybody screaming about it, my old jaded self just said, everybody take a deep breath, sit back, relax. We've got several episodes left to go and another entire season coming up that we already knew about. Let's see what they do with it. Then if they don't come through, then let's raise our voices together and say, this is not okay. And luckily that hasn't had to happen yet. So expectations for the couple, I really agree with Krista in her point about, not that I want him to suffer, but I really want to see Stamets process his grief. I want to see a little bit about how he does that. You know, he's talked with Culber once already this season, in the virtual reality thing that he was doing in engineering. So that was a nice beginning, but it's like, okay, where is he? What's going to happen? But I want to see if Stamets is going to evolve from the stoic. He's almost like the human version of a Vulcan to me. He doesn't show a lot of emotion, but you know it's bubbling underneath the surface. And I want to see if more of that comes out through the grief process or because of it, and he grows as a character that way. There was something else I was going to say, and I can't remember. My biggest concern is with their relationship going forward is how are they. I don't care how they do it, because it's science fiction. There's so many different ways that I don't want to peg them down to just one satisfactory way to do it. That's just from my perspective. But how effective is his return going to be on? What kind of effect is that going to have on the show? Are people going to scream, no, it's not the perfect way? Are we going to have the gatekeepers come out saying, see, told you, blah? Or are we going to have more Discovery fans join the gatekeepers saying, no, that wasn't the right way to do it? Piss on everything. Pardon my French. I probably shouldn't have said that. So that's my one concern. It's a hope that they get it right, but it's also a hope that the fandom doesn't overreact if it's not what they'd hoped for, because I don't want to get their future bogged down with expectation.
Excellent points. Ryan.
Yeah, my reaction to it is just, I was pissed. Just pissed. I mean, you know, this was Star Trek's first ongoing gay couple, you know, and to me, this was not a good message to get out of the gate, you know, like, you know, and especially considering that Aaron Herbert himself is gay, you know, it just kind of like, how did he think that this was going to go over well? And obviously they knew. They tried to mitigate that with the after trek and talking with Glad, as Tyler mentioned, but it felt not only just the trope of barrier gaze, but it felt like something from another show. Like it felt like it was from some post 9/11 espionage show where the agent is turned on and he has to kill the guy, and you know, now we have to deal with that story, right? So I'm not a big fan of this, of Culber's death. I'm willing to see where it goes, and I may reassess my feelings once I get a broader sense of the overall story for them. And the only way that I can see this work is one, as Krista and Scott mentioned, just showing the grief process. Because as a writer myself, I'm interested in the process of moving a character from one point to the other. How is this character going to change, and what are the moments? And unfortunately, in a show like Discovery, we can't get a lot of those moments because there's so much to be served. There's the huge arc of the Red Angels. There's the arc of Berman and Spock, and there's the arc. You know, it's just like there's all these other things going on that we don't get to spend as much time. And the second part of that is, if this is an Orpheus type of story, right? I might be willing to go with it more. You know, what will Paul sacrifice to return his Eurydice, which is Hugh, back to life? What is the thing that is going to penalize him for this? What is he going to lose? How is he going to change to bring Hugh back? What is he going to go through? Because I think the only way you can make it more interesting is if you push the character further up against the wall and have him make that difficult choice, which will benefit him but might harm something else, or have him lose his career, or whatever it is. What is the stake that he has to come up against in order to return his love? And then once he was back, I'd like to see, I think, it's been mentioned that, more of the daily grind of their relationship, because I think into this point, and I think in especially a lot of shows previous to Discovery, we get a lot of gay relationships, but sometimes when it's a show dominated by straight people, the gay relationship kind of gets treated with kid gloves. So it doesn't have that nuanced complication. So we only get to see the sunshine and the romance, but we don't get to see the petty bickering and, well, you decide what's for dinner tonight. And those little things that actually make a relationship whole. You got to take it with the good, bad, and the ugly. And I'd like to see more of that kind of just that daily relationship grind in Paul and Hugh.
I think that's the one disservice with Discovery and having our first gay couple on Discovery is that imagine what it would have been like on something like TNG. Like we would have gotten a lot of that, and it's disheartening to think that we may not get it here. And I have to resign myself to thinking that we probably won't, as much as we would all love to see it. And maybe I'll be surprised and we will, because, we had toothbrushing. So that was, and we've had some minor bickering, but it's like been mostly on the bridge and in front of people and stuff like that. But especially because they have such a wonderful chemistry and they have such a beautiful relationship. It would be so important, not just for us to see, but for cis straight people to see again, and to break the barriers of what people who don't have queer friends think about our lives. Obviously, everybody here really struggled with this death. I audibly gasped. I think I may have screamed. And when they say oh, the blood drained from her face, I think just all the good stuff kind of drained out of my body when that happened. And for me, it was really difficult not to see it as a trope. And I still struggle with not seeing it as a trope. And it is extremely frustrating that a gay writer and gay actors, the actors do what they're given, right? I would like to think that some of these actors are allowed to give feedback and input on their characters and what happens. But at the end of the day, I'm sure what's written is generally what's written and you can't deviate from that. So here was the story for Stamets and Culber that apparently was written from day one. And I think that Aaron Harberts, who is no longer with Discovery, I think he was well aware that what they were doing was going to fall into that trope and get that feedback. And that's what they were so quick to immediately on After Trek deal with the pushback. Yeah. Oh, so it did you want to say something? Yeah. Okay. Jump in.
Just because you said you hope that the actors have some say in all of this, I do happen to know that they usually do on this show, maybe not to the massive extent that one would hope sometimes, but I do know that Jason Isaacs had massive say in the arc that Lorca was gonna go with. They developed it with him. He even helped write the big Make the Empire Glorious Again speech. Improvising stuff occasionally. And I've also talked to Mary Chiefo about it, and she also feels like she has some advocacy for L'Rell in certain ways that she expresses herself and where the character is going. So I would think that particularly on that issue, the fact that Wilson Cruz has been with GLAAD himself and all of that, I would think and hope that they do go back to him and to Anthony too. to at least get their input on these things. So obviously you don't know what the extent is here, and especially for Wilson, season 1 being just like a supporting actor and all of that, but he's also now credited as a main actor, so you don't know. But it seems to be much more collaborative here than it used to be on other track shows where the actors really had zero say and never even saw them.
Go ahead.
I think something we can all like really. Is someone else talking? I think something we can all agree on is there was a big shift from season 1 of Discovery to season 2, even in terms of like the tone and the narrative. I feel like that the death of Culber must have been established prior to when, you know, some new writers were injected that are still with the show. And I have a hard time believing that they weren't trying to, again, do a U-turn on that story beat, similar to some of the pieces that we're seeing and changes with the second season. Because even if you think about it, it's like that moment was not only a disservice to Culber and Stamets, but it was also a big disservice to Burnham and Tyler. I still to this day cannot forgive Ash Tyler or look at him in a certain way, because there were no consequences really for him in a lot of ways. So I feel like they must understand that, and there has to be like something that they're trying to angle in on to rectify kind of some of those story mistakes.
Yeah, I think mistakes is a good word. And I hate to say that. Like, my other podcast is Disco Trek. We focused on Discovery. And so I spent a lot of time thinking critically about these episodes. And when it comes to things like are gay characters or sexual assaults or is or isn't it, and having my own personal life experiences, I can't not talk about those things. And it often, they're negative subjects. And so I can't really spin it in a way that's like super positive. To me, Discovery's like 2 biggest failures were killing Culber and then the Ash Tyler Laurel assault, but it's actually memories of consensual sex thing. And that's me. And that's because of my life experience that it has hurt me so much. And I've had to kind of convince myself, you know, after the first season was over and I had time to sit with everything and listen to what Anthony and Wilson were saying, I find myself having to trust them. That doesn't mean that I have to suddenly be happy or support what's going on. But again, like I want to be hopeful. But you know, we're told we're going to see Culber again. We don't have the information on how. We have started to see Stamets grieve, which I think is wonderful. There is definitely some story going on with what's happening with the mycelial network, both with Culber and Stamets, but with May Ahern. Like, she is a product of the mycelial network. And so having her pop in to season 2 has made me, again, kind of question and think critically about what is going on within the mycelial network and how they're reaching out to us. I mean, you know, Culber stays in the network. We've not seen him outside of it at this point, whereas Ahern is a hallucination of Tilly. I mean, I say hallucination because only Tilly can see her. But she was, sorry, again, spoilers, you know, a fungus, a spore that they have now extracted from Tilly. And I guess she's a little alien thing. I'm not quite sure. It just begs a lot of questions. And at this point, I almost expect to see not Culber coming back out of the network as a human being, but maybe Stamets somehow ascending into the network to be with Culber. And then in that case, we have this beautiful story of, I'm sorry if this is like this is like just came to me. So I'm not trying to be like too speculative or fan theory. But like, you know, were that to happen, it would be pretty awesome because we'd have like, you know, two gay guys ruling the mycelial network and like the founding mothers of, I don't know, gay space love. That's terrible. I don't know how to say it in a way that's eloquent that I really want to, but we're told that the mycelial network is kind of helps run the universe. And then we have this beautiful, wonderful couple doing that. And I'm totally okay with that. So that's kind of where I am. Marty, what about you?
And then the universe would be run by gays. And how amazing would that be? The universe powered by rainbows. Well, I think that I actually have kind of an opposite viewpoint. I didn't think that Culber's death was falling into that trope. I think that, because they showed them so normalized, brushing their teeth, domestic stuff, and, everyone who signs up for Starfleet knows the risks of being in Starfleet. And so I thought killing off a gay character, which is like, oh, they're just gay characters, gay people die all the time. If you were in Starfleet and you were gay and you died, it would just be like, oh, like it sucks, but he died just the same as this cis person died, or, XYZ person died. So that's kind of the stance I took on it. But, I also agree that I think the representation does matter. So their relationship does need to be like upfront in the show. Not only for us, but for everyone else who's watching the show, to make it, an accepted normal thing, which is something that this community is still struggling to get nowadays, even in 2019.
I think that the longer it takes for them to get back to this storyline, the more it starts to feel almost like tokenism to me. Because they keep promising this reunion or this, but they're going deeper and deeper into what seems like a much more complicated storyline with the Red Angel and the Seven Lights in the Sky, and it's only like a 14 episode season, so they don't have that long basically.
And
everything.
Wilson Cruz got promoted to regular cast member, and it's been 3 episodes, and we've only seen him in a hologram.
Yeah.
For 20
so
seconds.
I'm kind of wondering, like, when is it coming? When is it going to happen?
Yeah. And the longer it takes, the less time they have to develop it into something worthwhile.
Right.
Mm-hmm. That's the one thing that I've been struggling with the most, is this transition from broadcast TV in 22, 26 episodes per season, condensing it into 12 to 14 episodes. What gets the chopping block? What gets glossed over? But with Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz's characters being main characters, hopefully we can cross our fingers their storyline or aspects of their storyline that we think are important aren't the ones that end up on the cutting room floor for the sake of the larger story arcs. Mm-hmm. That's something I think we're going to be, I don't know if struggle's the word, but learning to deal with even into the coming season. After this one's done.
I think that watching Discovery can be a struggle for queer people because, we were told beforehand, you will be in Star Trek. We're going to have a gay couple. And so we were like, what? Some of us were crying. Like, it was the best news ever. Right. And then we get to see this. I keep saying beautiful. I don't have another word. They're beautiful people.
They're a beautiful couple.
They, to me, like with the chemistry, like they are the most believable, loving relationship I've ever seen in Star Trek. I know that's a big loaded thing to say. That's okay. So we have them and we're like, yes, here we are. And yes, we're normal people. We didn't walk in with a pride flag. Like, look at us. Right. And then Culber is murdered, and it is the worst, most affront. Having your neck broken like so suddenly like that. The way that it happened was so jarring that it just ripped something out of you, because you don't know it's coming. Like someone pulls out a gun, you see the gun, you're like, oh no, okay, it's coming. No, there is nothing that said this is going to happen. So seeing that was extremely jarring. And then we're thrown into what the just happened and placated by, oh no, wait and see. Oh no, wait and see. And so this isn't just us watching some characters. This is, how is Star Trek translating our story and our representation? And so, like what Ned said, it starts to maybe feel like tokenism. I don't think that's wrong. I think that's a very valid statement, because whether it turns out to be true or not, it's what we're feeling because of the story being drawn out. And so I think it's really important. We do this podcast to amplify queer voices. Marty and I have gotten quite a bit of feedback that we do have cis straight white people out there listening to the show too. And we've had people listen to the show and change their perspective. And at the heart of it, that's also what we want to do. And so I think it's really important for those listening to understand, and I'm sure they do, but just to emphasize that this experience is very different for us as queer people. And again, it's the first time in Star Trek history. And Star Trek is deeply personal and intimate. For most everyone I know, it's not just I watch a TV show called Star Trek. It's I've been watching Star Trek all my life, or I started watching Star Trek in 2009 and whoa, it opened up this whole new world and it really resonated with me. And I've made all these friends, and like our relationships with Trek are just so deeply personal. So we experience it at a different level there. And then to see us for the first time in Star Trek and to have this happen is just very, very difficult to deal with, whether you think it was a trope or not. We're just kind of left to wait and see. And that's hard. It's just hard. And so I want people to understand, because a question came up before. I don't remember if it was specifically regarding Stamets and Culber or what it was, but it was just about how obviously we're different people. We have different life experiences. Our perception is going to be very different. Okay, I think that's all I needed to say. Sorry, I got really passionate there.
Yes, something that I appreciate about previous Trek series is that you tended to know who you were supposed to root for.
Mm-hmm.
You had 7 or 8 main cast members that you knew it was going to be a Troy story or a Worf story. And as much as I love these new characters that they're introducing, Discovery is a crowded ship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a crowded universe, and everyone needs their fair shake. It's part of me is thinking, I don't know who I'm supposed to root for. Like, I know I'm supposed to root for Burnham and Tilly and Saru, but as far as the rest of them goes, I'm really not sure. I don't know if it's supposed to be that transparent or if it's supposed to be more opaque. I don't know.
Well, and Stamets himself, Stamets got some pushback because he was grumpy. My friend Aaron Harvey hated Stamets because he's like, man, he's super cynical. Like, this is our representation. Because, again, we know that we come in a variety of gay, right? We're all different. But for people who have not been exposed to queer culture, there are people watching Star Trek that have no queer friends, or they may interact with us on social media, but they don't know anyone, and especially trans people. And I won't go off on that tangent, but the hate that I see is just ignorance. Go make some trans friends, please. Go reach out, understand, people just like us, we're all the same in that way.
It's really nice to have a cranky shouty gay.
And now I'm losing my train of thought. Sorry, I get really hyped up.
She's the crankiest, shoutiest gay I've ever seen outside of Stamets, actually.
So
yeah.
and so, for you, he resonates. I didn't find him, overtly offensive or anything like that, but
I just thought he was closed off.
Yeah, but for some people who've never interacted with any LGBTQ people, they might just think, oh, well, that's what gays are like. And that's a very closed-minded way of thinking.
But I do feel like we got the dichotomy of the, within their relationship itself, because Culber, for as little as we really got to spend with him, he did have a bit more of a nurturing side. to him to complement the grumpiness. You even think about their first moment in sickbay,
Mhm.
where like they're back and forth. You can tell they've been doing it for eons, but they still love each other despite those differences.
And they balance each other really well, I think, because even in this, was it episode 1, where we have Stamets watching the little video message of Culber, and Culber's nurture and love pulls that out of Stamets. And so we get to see that too. And, as we got to know Stamets, we did realize he's not just a grumpy dude. Like, put him with his spores, y'all. Like, he loves those spores as much as he loves Culber, I'm sure. But anyway.
Did you have something to say?
But maybe to add to that, no single queer character can ever represent the whole spectrum of the, like, he's a person too. Like, it's not just about him, and neither can the two of them, especially since they're both cis gay guys. But also they can never represent all cis gay guys in the world. People have variety, and I think that's too much pressure on them to ask them of that. But the other thing is too that because you keep saying, well, the straight people watching that may not have queer friends, they need to see what we're like. But like, we're just like, there's a variety of us, and there's so I think I would always hope that people get that they can't encompass like everything. But that's what I was driving at too, with that. So far they've been really domestic, and that's nice, but that's also not the whole experience. And it certainly would feel tropey if one of them would like to do drag or something, and I'm not saying that they should do that, but at the same time, there's been no explicitly queer thing, and I don't think that in the future that's suddenly gone, like that we suddenly stop liking the rainbows and the glitter and the drag and all of that. So I would like to see that too in some way, like something that is not just, they're just like us, the gay people, and the gay people are just like the straight people, that domestic kind of normalization thing. I think they could try to show us that there's still some kind of queer community, even though obviously not being marginalized anymore changes things, but people still flock together. I would say.
We're still proud of who we are in the future. I mean, I can't pull specific examples of characters and their things they're proud of out of my head right now, but yeah, like rainbows, I don't think are gonna go away.
What season of RuPaul's Drag Race do you think they'll be on in the 23rd century?
Ooh.
If I can, to go back and defend Stamets, but also kind of expose at another, at least I feel, kind of kill your gay trope, is part of the reason he might feel really bad and be so grumpy is, I think it's episode 2 or not episode 2 or 3, episode 3 or 4 of the first season, where his best friend, who is also an engineer, who I don't know, I guess I might be reading into it, but seemed like was also a gay friend of Stamets, who's also gay, died. And so, they killed off that minor character, PDQ, and it shows that they kind of skip over the grieving process there as well. And I kind of hope that they at least mention that again, because they just seem to really be killing off all of the gay guys that are around Stamets. And that, he's got a lot to be grumpy about. So
I think Strahl is in the comics though, and I think he has a girlfriend, so at least he's not gay.
Oh, okay. Well, then he's my best friend. I don't know.
I think they're friends and colleagues. That's what we get from that. So he's still,
no, I wasn't saying they were like former boyfriends or anything. I was just saying they had.
We know there's a woman there.
Oh,
so that's
just like give me a lesbian right quick.
Like,
Queer women.
There's another thread that I kind of picked up on when they were brushing their teeth. There was a line that Culber says, like, that's the lot that's the straw I drew, or something like that I'm destined to love a man who's destined or bound for glory, or something like that. I can't remember the line exactly. it's almost like he almost, when he was working on the spore drive, it's like he almost took his personal relationships for granted, and he fell more in love with his spores than he did his partner. So that's also why I think he's a little bit more closed off now in season 2. It's like Hugh is everywhere I look, because I almost feel like he took him for granted.
Yeah, well, and now he's still involved in the network, and so he's now, those two loves are combined, and he can't have one without the other. So that has to be super confusing.
Right.
And
Painful.
was episode 2. Episode 2 is weird because at first I think he was ordered to jump. Like, they didn't ask him, which I thought was weird.
It was a weird segue with Tilly saying, like, assuming Lieutenant Stamets is okay with it.
But there's no, like,
But
they don't
he's
ask him. He's just doing it. And he tells her what happened and why he's nervous about going in. And when he comes out, he's visibly upset. And we don't know what happened there. And then we have Ahern appearing and all this, weird stuff going on. But yeah, we don't know. And again, that's why I kind of wish it was 26-hour-long episodes to really get the deep dive on all those beautiful things.
I think jumping off of what you just said, Heather, I think what's really fascinating to me, and why I think I'm being a little bit more patient with these writers, is the first 3 episodes have really delved into certain characters. Like last episode, we got a pretty big, decent deep dive into Laurel and Tanner, right? What the overarching theme, and we've heard this in interviews, is science and spirituality. And I think the idea of loss, especially the loss that Stamets went through, is it's leading us somewhere, I think, really interesting. I'm personally an atheist, but I think it's interesting to see some of these characters battle with what is science and what is something outside of yourself, and how that loss perhaps changes your perspective or makes you a bit more open to perhaps the impossible. And I'm really excited to see how that might tie into Culber's return. In my mind, I feel like it's definitely leading into that debate.
Yeah, I'm just really curious to I want to get there. Like, like same thing with, like, what did Burnham do to Spock? We've got to know already. Tell us now.
Oh, right.
But we're told this is going to be epic, so I want to see the epicness, and I want to have faith and trust that epicness will happen, and we will get this beautiful love story. And maybe it will all be wrapped in a pretty bow for us. I don't know. I don't need that. I just want to find a place where I am more at peace with Culber's death.
Right. And hopefully before episode 10 or 11.
Yeah.
That. So they ended up shacked up in Miami, I guess now. That's what happened. Fine.
I know we got that one-shot comic from IDW Publishing, but I'm still really hoping that we get like one of those deep dive novels about either Stamets or Culber that will tell their story.
Yeah,
I think that would be really important for our community, is to have a novel dedicated, like a gay romance novel, but it's Star Trek.
Yeah, written by a gay author.
Written by a gay author.
Because that having that perspective in the writer's room, and I don't know, outside of Aaron Harbert, who is gone, I'm not sure if there are other queer writers or creatives working. Is Gretchen okay? But she's gone.
Gretchen, yeah, she's gone.
Okay. Well, again, it's important to also have that representation in the writer's room and in the the creative process. So
I
Ted
thought
Sullivan.
I saw Gretchen and Aaron as showrunner producer roles or something.
they're still on there because they were helping develop this, but they've been let go.
Okay.
They were contracted for season 2, but they got let go. Yeah.
Oh, okay, but their name's still on it. Okay.
There are people still in the writer's room, definitely.
Okay. Okay. If you know who they are, let me know. down the road.
I don't want to I don't want to shout out names now and then be wrong. Have wrong about them or something, but I know that like if you go through people's Twitter profiles of the writers on the show, some of them are like out and visible, but I don't want to mix people up.
I agree.
Do that.
I feel like they are.
Room.
Yeah.
Like,
I feel like I've seen, because I follow a lot of the creatives, and again, it's just not like the big names that are on the screen, so I can't remember who they are.
Yeah, I mean, they do write, like, I can check, but I know that they are there, and that's not just a straight writer's room.
Yeah. Well, that's, again, just emphasis. Super important to have that representation everywhere. And agree with Marty, we need a book where we get the deep dive, because the one-shot comic was like a short trek. Like, it was great and I loved it, but I want more. So we've been talking a long time, and that's okay. I think that all of our listeners will listen, because this has been a really wonderful and important discussion. But I say, do we want to go around, Marty, and do our favorite scenes or quotes?
Yeah. Let's go in reverse order, because I feel like we haven't heard from Ryan in a while.
Okay, sounds good. Sorry, I'm getting over a cold or something.
Oh, me too. I've been there.
But my favorite scene obviously would be like the toothbrush scene, because that's sort of like a slice of life. You know, it's the quotidian, if you will. You know, and just having them chat and then get ready for bed. And it's a very human moment, right? But I think my other favorite scene with them has to be the one in Brother, where Paul is listening to the Caecilian opera and he's watching that message from Hugh. And, you know, Wilson Cruz really sells that moment when he says, "And I do love it when you do things for me." And then he gets all like love struck and awkward at the same time before signing off. And I just think it's adorable. But then again, I think Wilson Cruz is very adorable. So
so say we all.
It for me. But that has to be one of my favorite moments. And I hope going forward, like I said, I hope they have more of those human moments.
Here. Scott.
I think one of my favorite moments wasn't actually with them as a couple, but what represented the realness of their relationship. Even though I loved the toothbrushing scene and the moments when they actually said "I love you" to each other, the scene where I think it was Choose Your Pain, when Culber said to Burnham, "You should know Lieutenant Stamets rarely, if ever, listened to me." And Burnham said, "I can handle him." And Culber comes back with, "Please, show me how." That it showed that it wasn't all perfection and roses and rainbows and unicorn farts. It was real. It was a struggle. It was the process of a relationship and working at it, that he opened up enough to his crewmate to say, "Yeah, I'm human. I could use some help in trying to understand my significant other." And that hit me really hard and made me really glad to see that they'd put that into the story and not just gloss over something like
that. Tyler.
Without a doubt, my favorite has to be from the mid-season finale, Into the Forest I Go, when Stamets was making those micro jumps and Culber was outside pumping in full of can't remember the drug, but when they both said "I love you" to each other, and it was so tender, because we also have to remember that they're both Starfleet officers and they have a job to do, and they're in the middle of a war that will decide the future of their species pretty much. And they're shaking off the bounds of duty for a really touching moment, and they know they both have a job to do, and they have a whole quadrant counting on them. But the fact that you get to see a little bit of vulnerable side with Culber, like telling Lorca to call it off, and I don't normally get emotional when things like that happen on television, but I was oddly emotional when that was going on because you could feel the connection between the two of them, and I'm like, oh my god, that's what I want. That's what I want. So I want more of that.
You're here.
Yeah. Ned?
I think my favorite moment was when Stamets chases Culber down in the spore drive and is like, no, I want to stay here with you, because it showed how real, I mean, they did a little like, oh, Stamets is really driven and Culber is more like the emotional one, but it showed that there was a real depth of feeling there. There was a real commitment and a real relationship, and Stamets was willing to choose that when it came down to it. It just made it feel really, I guess, real to me that he would choose to stay in the not real place with the person he loved.
Avery?
I am going to give the hack answer and say the toothbrushing scene, just because I love seeing mundane made into something beautiful. And I also think that a big problem with a lot of TV and movies is that they have a tendency to make the characters not real. I mean, I hate to be crass, but it's kind of like in House, there's an episode where he goes to the bathroom and you can kind of see it. And it's like, finally, we finally get to see what a whole person is like. And you never get to see that in TV. And so to go back to the toothbrushing scene, it's just, to me, it really is important because we, as queer people, are, struggle everywhere to be seen as just normal, average, everyday people. Anything that shows that, to me, is just about as important as it gets. So, hack answer, but it's also true. So,
I don't think that's a bad answer at all. I think that's a very valid answer. Sabrina?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Yep.
It felt like a direct message for us, honestly. And I mean, again, it's for everyone, but I felt like he was speaking to all of us.
Agreed. Krista?
I would have to say my favorite would of course be like the big kiss scene between the two of them. But I also really love, there's a scene where they're in the med bay and Stamets is unconscious and Culber's talking to Tilly and he kind of just runs his hand down his leg and he's just touching him, like letting him know that even though he's not conscious, he's right there. And then a little bit later, he has a moment where he says, like, I'm going to stay right by your side, where Stamets is completely out of it. He has no idea he said it, but just showing that, like, he's going to be with him no matter what happens to him. It's just that super, like, oh moment, I think.
I can't believe we've been talking for 2 hours, and this is the first time that the kiss scene has come up.
That's true.
Laz, how about you?
So I feel like everybody took my choices because we didn't unfortunately get a lot of them in the first season. And I'm gonna cheat with my favorite quote. So I'm actually going to read a quote and a half from Wilson Cruz himself, because I'm a big fan of, again, his activism, his portrayal of Culber. So this is Wilson Cruz. As a fan of the franchise, I count myself among the countless LGBTQ fans who have longed to see themselves and our relationships depicted on Star Trek. it's important that we continue to uplift and strengthen our LGBTQ youth who are the future of our community and remind them that their voices are heard.
Hear, hear. That's a beautiful quote.
Yeah.
Heather, what was your favorite Space Boom?
Oh no. Okay. Gather the emotions.
I know it's you now.
Gather the emotions. All right. All of it. If I had to pick out a moment, it would be the kiss, but not because of the kiss, but because of the response. Like I mentioned earlier when I tweeted it, it just got it was celebrated. And that to me just said, you know, despite anyone who's queering out on social media has probably gotten a really crappy comment at least once. And being vocal about discovery, I get a lot of those. And that tweet, and basically, like I just said, you know, I've been waiting for this. So proud to be a Star Trek fan. Like I posted pictures of the scenes. I got so many positive, supportive comments. Like, yes, we're so happy from all kinds of people. And I got maybe 3 homophobic comments. And no one wants to get 3 homophobic comments, but I focused on, you know, the 50 wonderful comments that I got. And it just reinforces to me that the people who are happy that it not just us, but our allies who support us, we are so much stronger in number than the homophobic a-holes, that don't want to see us there. And I can't reinforce that enough, whether it's for us as LGBTQ family or for just people who like discovery. Like the haters, there's not a lot of them. Like it may seem like it, but their numbers are dwarfed by ours. And so it's so important to just continue to, if you are comfortable being out and using your voice, to continue to do that, because it will inspire others, whether you get that direct feedback or not. Like I said, your empowerment empowers others. It's like a fire. We're all just, okay, I'm not going to make a really bad gay joke. I was going to say we're all flaming, and that's terrible. Let's not go there. But a quote I was going to pull out is a quote that was already mentioned. I'm not going to cry. I'm totally going to cry. So I'm sorry. Because, you know, it was a quote from Culber to Stamets that Stamets, we assume, would not hear. But I think that this quote works really well when I say it to our family who does not feel empowered, and our family who's struggling, and especially our family who are being beaten and threatened and murdered just because of who we are. So that quote is, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay right by your side. It'll all be okay. And I can't promise that it's all going to be okay for every queer person out there, but I will promise that I will always be here for you. And I think that all of us that are here right now will always be there for you. And so for people who listen, who are scared, just know that you have family. And feel free to reach out to me personally anytime you need that support. And if anyone else here wants to offer that when we go around and close, you're welcome to do that. But yeah, that relationship that Stamets and Culber has, I think, really amplifies the love that we have for each other that I have felt in this podcast. And I just want to personally thank all of you for joining us and for sharing your perspective and your very personal stories. And I want to especially thank my co-host Marty for this wonderful, wonderful idea that turned into a wonderful, personal, important, empowering experience for me. And I'm sorry for making you guys cry. I'll be quiet now.
How dare you?
You're amazing. You're all right.
It's not a Heather podcast if I don't cry. So
Heather, I think that was really beautiful. And thank you. And I can't believe I have to follow that up. But my favorite moment, I'm going to copy Tyler here and say it was the scene when, they're about to do something very dangerous and they don't know how everything is going to turn out, but they're going to do their jobs. And they had that tender moment where they said, I love you. Whatever happens, just know that I love you. And I started ugly crying in that episode. I had to turn it off and then come back to it later. But that was definitely my favorite Space Boo moment.
Uh-oh.
Okay. Big sigh. Big sigh. Okay, I don't know how many times I can thank everybody here. This is more than I ever expected. And I am just full of love and emotion right now. So yeah. Happy Valentine's Day. I don't know where I'm going with that. That's what this episode is. It's our celebration of love. And I feel so much love right now, which is super amazing. So I think
I went from having no Valentines to 8 Valentines.
I love it. I have a Valentine, but I will be all by myself on Valentine's Day. But y'all know what? It's cool because there's Star Trek on TV. I was like,
and Star Trek family on Twitter.
Yes, and Star Trek family on Twitter, and we all get to share that experience. Although I will, I have to put the phone down when I'm watching Discovery. I'm just I have to be focused, but that's also because I do a podcast.
Oh yeah.
What we typically do in all of our episodes is go around and tell everyone where they can find us on social media. You don't have to if you don't want to, but.
And if you have anything else you'd like to say about our favorite Space Boos while you're doing that, feel free.
Yep. So I will hand that back off to you, Marty, to go around the table.
All right. So Laz, let us know final thoughts on Space Boos and where people can find you if they'd like to talk to you and continue the conversation.
Sure, yeah. I think honestly, I'm just really grateful that we got to do this roundtable. I don't know that I speak regularly with most of you, but I'm looking forward to speaking to you guys more and getting to know you more because
absolutely,
just hearing your stories and I don't know, I'm inspired and I really sincerely can't wait to speak to you more. You can reach me as a segue on pretty much all the social medias at my handle at Laz Marquez, LazMarquez. And you can check out my artwork on www.lazmarquez.com.
Check out his artwork. It's amazing. And Laz is amazing.
His artwork is pretty awesome.
Yes, it is.
Mm-hmm.
Krista. Oh, there he goes. He's hiding now.
I'm hiding myself.
Just want to say thank you for letting me come on here and talk with you guys. This was
thank you for being here.
Wonderful. I think this is honestly the first ever conversation I've had out as a bisexual person in a big no. So it was really wonderful and I feel really just affirmed by all of you guys and I now want to stalk all of you online and be friends with you.
That's why this podcast exists.
I'm crying again. Stop.
Really
okay.
Sorry, I'm crying too. It's fine. And if you want, you can follow me on Twitter. It's at KJMCLAUGH. So thank you again.
Thank you for being here, Krista. Sabrina.
Yes, thank you. I also don't want to cry again or something, but being bisexual, for the longest time, I was not part of any queer community at all because I was with a straight man for 8 years up until almost over a year ago now. But I feel this is being able to participate in things like this really reaffirms that I'm a queer person and that there's more of you out there. Sorry. I'm supposed to say my Twitter handle now so people understand it. So my Twitter handle is @DisneyAnna89. I also have a work Twitter, which is my name, but that's linked in my private profile, so you can also find that there. Just because like future employers don't need to see my nerdery all the time. that up. And yeah, that's that. And I'd love to talk to more of you.
Thank you, Sabrina. Avery.
Well, I just if I could have them do anything together, I just want to see them eat breakfast together. I'm miss gotta have normalcy.
Coffee and croissants.
That's all he wants for breakfast. You can catch me on Twitter. I'm at Kira Resists, KIRARESISTS. And Ned and I have a podcast together called View Hall, where we review whatever movie we've just watched and talk about it and how we wish every character was gay. So check that out.
Yeah.
And
that sounds like a lot of fun.
It's great.
I'll check that out.
And then if you want to follow me, I'm apparently at Ned Devil, but I don't like Twitter very much, so I had to look up what my handle was just now. But I'll hang out more because this was such a delight.
I can't wait to do this again. Yeah, so. Also at View Hall.
At View Hall.
Thank you both for being here. Tyler.
Oh boy. I've been on several podcasts with Heather and others, and I gotta say this is one of the best I've ever been a part of, and one of the best I've ever listened to. So this was very special, and I'm very grateful I got to be a part of this. I guess I'm on the record too now as a gay man, and if my parents ever figure out how to use the internet, I still love you. So I appreciate it. Like I said, it's been a struggle for me to feel accepted by the community that I'm a part of. So SDLV helps quite a bit. So I'll help you venture to Las Vegas because it's wonderful. This will be my 4th year. But you can find me on Twitter and Instagram, and I sincerely hope you do, at RT Habiger, HAB as in boy, IGER. Find me on Facebook at Tyler Habiger, because to borrow a quote from TNG, on the Enterprise, no one is alone.
You're here. Thank you, Tyler. Scott.
This is only the second podcast I've ever been a part of. The first time was back at the 50th anniversary at Star Trek Las Vegas. I was working the event and got briefly interviewed by somebody, and I can't remember who it was. Terrible. So this, and I was super nervous about it. So this has been a really welcoming, wonderful, enlightening experience for me. So thank you, everybody, for sharing in that.
Thank you.
If you want to find me on Twitter, you can at TiggerTrekker. I'm a fan of both Tigger because I'm a Disney-phile and Trekker. And that's most of where I'm at. I'm on Instagram too, but I don't post a lot there yet. So thank you very much. Can I do a plug? I might get a little bit emotional about this. For those who are struggling in the LGBTQ community and have not received the kind of support that they need, if they don't feel comfortable reaching out to individuals, that there's places they can go for help, for assistance, and just a friendly ear. Places like the two that stick out to me are the It Gets Better Project and the Trevor Project.
Mm-hmm.
And one that's close to the Star Trek family is the Pop Culture Hero Coalition, run by Chase Masterson from Deep Space Nine. So that those who want to help those in the LGBT community, those are two really big ways that you can offer your support.
And we'll make sure to throw links to those organizations in the show notes. So if you're looking
Okay.
for those, you can find links to that in the show notes. That reminds me of the Night of Diversity party that we did at SCOV, which Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp attended. And we were able to help homeless youth take shelter for a night through the night ministry. So there are plenty of help out there if you need it. Thank you for bringing that up, Scott.
Thank you.
Ryan.
Yes, thank you so much, Marty and Heather, for having not only just me on the show and everyone else, but for having just this podcast exist. I think it's great that there's some place that we as a community can go and listen and hear our stories in the fandom that we're so entrenched in. As far as finding me on social media, I'm on Twitter at Ryan T. Riddle. I'm on Instagram as Ryan Thomas Riddle. And if you want to see my website and contact me through there, it's ryanthomasriddle.com.
He is a hoot on social media, so it's worth a follow.
Thank you.
It is
I'm
true.
very opinionated.
And Heather, where can people find you should they want to continue the conversation?
I can't stop crying. This is a problem.
Oh no.
It's
been that kind of episode.
It has been. I just want to say, having only really fully understood who I am in the past couple years, and sorry, my cat's being crazy. I live in a zoo, so thank you, cat, for interrupting me. Anyway, I've only really started to be vocal and participate in community events, LGBTQ community events, in the last few years. I don't have a huge network of friends that I hang out with here in Denver. And I really struggle, being that even now, like, I am a pansexual, polyamorous woman in a monogamous heterosexual relationship. So I struggle with imposter syndrome a lot. And when I had the idea for this podcast, I kind of thought, well, shit, what am I getting into? Like, how much pushback am I going to get because I don't look gay? I don't, and I'm sorry, I don't want to see, so I don't want to offend anybody by using gay as an overall umbrella term anyway. So these are the things that I struggle with what's an okay way to talk about our culture? What words are okay and aren't? Because I am not a professor in queerness. Like, I'm still learning. And I know for Marty too, this is always a learning experience for us. So it's a constant struggle. Every episode we do an approach, I'm like, am I going to do this? Am I going to honor this? And we're very blessed that we get feedback from all of you, and you tell us like, yeah, we really love this episode. And then I get, friends telling us that, my cis straight friend listened and their eyes have been opened. That's what we want to do. And getting that feedback directly from all of you and being able to look at your faces just means so very much to me. Many of you have talked about this being an affirming experience, and it's very much been that for me. So thank you. And it's imposter syndrome is something I'm going to deal with forever, probably. It's really helping me be a voice for people like me and say that, just because I'm in a relationship like this doesn't invalidate who I am. And I think that that's important for a lot of people to hear. So I just wanted to thank all of you. And I think that you have all affirmed that QueerTrek roundtables need to be a thing. So Marty, we'll discuss that a bit more, but I don't think there's a way to say we're never going to do this again. The more people we have, the more difficult it starts to be. But I think that this will be a thing now. So thank you to all of you, and I'm sorry for droning on. You can find me on Twitter at LLAPosper, which is LLAPAWSPER. Our podcast is at QueerTrek Pod. Marty, you're on Twitter somewhere.
I am on Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Time Travel Marty. And again, I want to thank all of you for being here with us today on our special Valentine's Day roundtable. It's been great to hear all of your stories and to hear how passionate you are, not only for Star Trek, the LGBT community, but also for our space booze. But yeah, again, you can find the podcast at QueerTrek Pod. I think this has been one of our best episodes yet, so we'll definitely have to do the roundtable thing again. Be sure to check out all the other shows on the Tricorder Transmissions Network. There's lots of great content out there for you. And I guess we'll just close until next time. Live, love, and prosper.
Wait. Number one, you can find Marty at Time Travel Marty, right? That's your
Did
Twitter.
I say that?
No. I did.
Well, you can find me online at Time Travel Marty.
There you go. And two, because we always forget this, we have a Facebook group.
Oh, yeah.
It's also called QueerTrek. So come and join us there. You'll see the art is our podcast art. So you can find us pretty easily. So you have to answer.
How do we always forget that? I got to write it down.
I don't know, but we do. Because we get caught up in love. Like, really, the core tenet of this podcast is love. We just love each other, and it's always about the feels, and so that is what happens. But yes, thank you, Marty, and sorry to hijack that. And
that's fine.
Thank you, everybody, and yes, live, love, and prosper.
Stop what? Stop worrying. Stop doctoring. Well, one tends to worry when they're doomed to love a brilliant but reckless maniac who's willing to risk his life for glory.
The captain was in danger.
Captains are in danger every day.
You are in danger. I've spent my entire career trying to grasp the essence of mycelium. And now, for the first time, I do. I saw the network, an entire universe of possibilities I never dreamed existed. It's unspeakably beautiful. I also knew you'd leave me if I let anything else endanger that creature.
Oh, so you do listen to me?
Not really. You sold that with a look.
Don't do anything that stupid ever again. You may not care about you, but I do. You sure you feel okay?
Yes, dear doctor. I feel okay.
Okay.
I saw you die. I watched Tyler kill you. I held your body in my arms. I thought it was a dream.
I wish it were. I remember your arms around me. You made me feel safe. You always did.
Damn it, get out of there. This place is quicksand. If we don't leave, we die.
Computer, play Castilian opera. The aria he loves, the one I hate.
This won't change anything.
I don't want it to change. I want it to be the way it was. Please let it be the way it was. This is perfect.
This was always my favorite time with you.
Did you know I loved you? I don't think I told you enough.
You showed me. All the time. Tell me about your day.
It was awful. My partner is dead. My life's work has been a waste. What I knew to be beautiful is hostile, and the mycelial network is hell.
No, Paul. You were right. The network is a gift. It's the thread that weaves life through space. But it is in danger.
Yet we're in danger. It's eating me alive. Well, the other me.
Oh, the other you deserves it. In his universe, that Stamets exploited the network for his own gain. He's the one who corrupted it. I needed you to follow me to warn you. The damage is spreading. Eventually, everything, everywhere will be exterminated. You have to save us by saving the network.
How? I can't even find my way out.
You're in a coma. On the Discovery. And the simplest way back is just to open your eyes.
I don't want to say goodbye.
It's never goodbye. Isn't that what you've been trying to teach all of us? Nothing in here is ever truly gone. I believe in you, Paul. I love you. Follow the music, Paul. Look for the clearing in the forest. Open your eyes. Do you hear that? I sent you my favorite aria so that you would reconsider your wildly lame position on Castilian opera. And, to add insult to injury, I got us actual tickets. I know you say you hate it and that you only do it for me, but I do love it when you only do things for me. I love it. All right, I'll see you later.
Commander Stamets. Oh, sorry to interrupt.